Hello everyone, I do hope you're well. Michelle here. This is the story of the strange disappearance of 19-year-old Luke Durbin. Luke was born in Ipswich in Suffolk, which is in southern England. Although his parents divorced when he was 5 years old, his mum and his sister and surrounding friends had very close bonds. Luke grew up loving his family, would do anything for his mum, and his sister and cousin were close friends as they grew up. Luke wanted for nothing, and there was nothing to indicate that Luke was going to have problems later on in his childhood. But he did, and that becomes relevant in the rest of this story. Although Ipswich was somewhat run down, by 2006 there were many plans in place and they're coming to fruition to increase the prosperity of the area. That said, Ipswich was riddled with drugs, drug dealers, prostitution, and gangs that were coming in from London, taking the drug trade from the local dealers. As Luke grew up throughout his childhood, he was bright, but he didn't care much for school. He preferred partying. He was the life and soul of the party. He was a clown. He was cool. He was charismatic, and people were drawn to him. Although Nikki, Luke's mum, knew that Luke had been smoking cannabis and his friendship group were smoking cannabis, in their teenage years, by the age of 16, Luke had actually stepped up the ante here and he'd started dealing cannabis, initially to his friends, but then to the wider community. He and his friend Alex, though, when they left school, they trained as chefs. Alex went on to work for celebrity chef Gordon Ramsay in London, but Luke didn't. He dropped out of college and he spent his days either taking drugs or dealing them. Dealing became a daily habit. And Luke drove a motorbike, but his friend Graham became Luke's driver. And Graham reports that it was just a daily thing, like Luke and Graham going out, doing some deals, and then spending the rest of the day either stoned or high. Class A drugs were now part of Luke's repertoire and he was snorting cocaine regularly. Then on the fateful night of Thursday, the 11th of May 2006, friend Alex came back from London for a night out. The plan was for Luke and friend Zach to stay at Alex's mum's house where Alex was staying. And the night started off that way. Luke went out to get some drugs, they snorted some cocaine, and then they went out around the pubs in the Ipswich area. The friends got separated. Alex was tired, he was a hard worker, working with Gordon Ramsay, for heaven's sake. And he went home. He wanted Luke and Zach to come with him, but they wanted to carry on the party. They're seen on CCTV, Alex getting into a taxi and Zach and Luke walking away, clowning around in the street. They went to a nightclub called Zest, which is no longer there, but at the time, Zest was a very popular night spot for young people. Interestingly, and central to this story, Luke had left his phones, he had 2 phones, and his wallet, keys, all at Alex's. Why he left them is now a massive point of speculation amongst Luke's family and friends, but also central to the police investigation, because did Luke want to just disappear? The fact that he left his phones and his money. Indeed, actually, he'd been to work that afternoon and left his wages, left £200 in an envelope. And why? If he knew he was going for a night out, why didn't he take that money with him? Very strange. Yeah, he had no money. So Zach paid for Luke to get into Zest nightclub and paid for drinks. Zach went to the bar. He bought the drinks, went back to where he left Alex, and Alex had disappeared. Completely disappeared. So now Zach was on his own, and he went home, had his drink and went home, assuming that Luke would be fine. He had a look round the nightclub. He couldn't find Luke, and he thought, well, maybe Luke's gone off, and, he's a big lad, he's 19, he can look after himself. Nothing was thought of these things, because Luke was unpredictable, he was adventurous, but he had a really sensitive side, and sometimes he just wanted to get away and be on his own. For example, his mum Nikki reports that one time he went to France for 2 days to find himself, and then rang her up and asked her could he come home, and she said, yeah, of course. So the fact that he disappeared this particular night wasn't unusual. And indeed, when Alex found out that Luke had not arrived at his mum's place, he didn't really think anything of it. And actually, he regrets this now, but he told Luke's mum that Luke was there, when actually he wasn't. But it was only on the Saturday that Alex told Luke's sister that he hadn't seen Luke. He'd gone home, and Luke actually didn't turn up at his mum's place, as he originally said, and concern started to rise. Nikki, Luke's mum, rung his workplace. He was actually working for a cafe near the sea, and he hadn't turned up for work, which was unusual, right? Luke, he played hard, but he also worked hard, and he hadn't turned up. As I said, he hadn't even taken his wages from his last shift, and the panic set in, and she rang round all his friends, she rang round the hospitals, and there was no signs, so she rang the police. So it then became a police investigation. Detective Ian Haddison, who was a great detective, he'd worked actually on the Soham murders that had taken place a few years before, he approached this as a missing person inquiry, but with the potential that one day this would be a murder investigation. So no stones were left unturned in this investigation. They hit the ground running. They contacted as many people as they could. They searched the local areas within like a 35 or 36 mile radius to see whether Luke, he'd got separated, he had no money, he tried to get home, maybe he tried to walk, maybe he'd been hit by a car and flung into a field. All of that was checked. Nothing. But the police took all the CCTV from the local area, and Luke had been sighted. As I said, Luke and Zach were seen at the taxi that Alex got into. Luke and Zach were seen walking down the road. They were seen outside of Zest nightclub. And then later in the evening, around 3 a.m, there's an eyewitness here that Alex was seen by a railway worker at the local train station, but there was no trains. But he was politely told to leave because there's no trains till the morning. So he did. He was then caught on CCTV at a local cab office. He had no money. He was trying to charm some taxi drivers to give him a lift. And they said no. I bet they really regret that now, but it's understandable. Young lad walks in, no money. They just think he's a chancer. They think he's after a free ride. They say no. His last reported sighting of Luke in life was seen on a zebra crossing and heading into the bus station. There was no buses back to his local area at that time. So what did he do from there? Did he go to sleep on the bus station and was abducted? Did he walk out of the bus station and just wasn't caught on CCTV? No one knows. A white Volvo was seen in the area just after 4 a.m. Shortly after Luke was seen on that very last CCTV footage. This Volvo was registered to a false name, and it had loose connections with the drug trade. Was Luke in that car? You see, the thing is, Luke was dealing. He was a local dealer, and drug gangs from London used to come into Ipswich to basically steal the turf. This was a turf war This was a territorial thing. So Luke was undercutting these big guys, these gangs. Luke was cocky. Luke was adventurous. He didn't take anything seriously. Had he stepped on one too many toes? That is the question. And that is the question that haunts this investigation. Was Luke kidnapped? There are gang members who, are now ex-gang members who are prepared to say that kidnappings were a thing. And the person was kidnapped and basically made to work off their drug debt. If they owed money, they had to work off their drug debt in any way that the gang saw fit. It could be prostitution. It could be working for them as a dealer. It could be something else. We just don't know. But there have been sightings, supposed sightings, several of them, in the Brixton area of young men, similar to Luke's appearance, like running away or just a fleeting sighting. Friend Rob actually reports potentially seeing Luke in the back of a BMW in the Ipswich area. That sighting has never been corroborated. There have been searches in properties, one garden where two people were arrested for using Luke's birth date and name for credit. Well, why would they do that? Cadaver dogs have searched areas. A garden was dug up, as I said, but actually it was remains, but it was fish remains from a fish pond that had confused the dogs. Other remains have been found in woods and sent off for analysis, and they're deer bones. When young people go missing, one of the major places where they're actually put if they're murdered, where their bodies are deposited, is in the sea. Ipswich is near the sea. It could be that Luke's body has been deposited in water, in a river, or directly in the sea, and it's been washed away. The North Sea, its tides are somewhat erratic. It's cold weather. There's lots of storms. So Luke's DNA has actually been sent to European countries where the tides might take bodies from Britain, like Holland, for example. But no leads, nothing. Luke has just vanished. We're now into the 15th year. Luke disappeared in May 2006. It's going to be 15 years in May, as I record this in February. Luke's mum has been driven almost to insanity. She's been out digging herself, digging up the ground with her bare hands. All his family are still waiting for news nearly 15 years later. Luke would now be in 33 or so, and he's just gone. Is he missing? Or has he been murdered? We just don't know. And there we have to leave the story, I'm afraid. So let me know your thoughts below. Have you heard of the Luke Durbin case before? And it makes you think, doesn't it? It makes you think. So I'll leave it there. I do hope you're well. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next video.